Tax revenues are up, but so too are costs, and a recession can hit at any time. State Senator Bob Huff is a Republican from Diamond Bar, until recently the Senate Minority Leader. Senator, thank you for taking the time.
Hey, great to be with you again.
One would argue that based on the governor's comments this past week, where he started off by saying, you're not going to hear any new programs from me, I'm focused on paying for what we've already committed to. That's right out of your playbook.
Well, it is, and I think it's a great position for him to be as we enter these whole budget negotiations, because that's really where we're starting right now. He's got to hold the line on spending, and he actually did do some things that ramped up things in the previous budget cycle, so this is a good time to hold back and just watch those grow, because they are.
What is the attitude from your colleagues in the legislature when you have a surge in revenue, as we've seen this past year?
Well, everybody's got a pet program they want to fund. And you look at the infrastructure that the governor outlined last year, you know, we had a problem with transportation. He wanted to do it with taxes. Didn't really get that solved. This year he talks about building infrastructure, but he comes up with $2 billion out of the general fund. So some of us, of course, want to spend it on the one-time things, because many of this is one-time money. But we certainly don't want to have ongoing expenses. But there is a pent-up demand to spend.
Let's talk about infrastructure. He mentioned it. The roads are crumbling, the highways are crumbling, we have problems with bridges. This is vital for the economy. The governor says, I know you got to bite the bullet and raise taxes, vehicle license fees, gas tax, whatever it is, you got to do it. You say that's a non-starter?
Well, it's a non-starter because we've already stolen about several $1 billion out of the motorists' pockets. And I say that because we have truck weight fees that are $1 billion a year that's going to the general fund. You have $1.9 billion that's created under this cap, putting the fuel under the cap of carbon trading that's going to other stuff. The motorists are already paying the money. Let's take that's $3 billion a year that we could be putting right now into infrastructure.
Yeah, some would argue, though, yes, you can make that argument. It's not going anywhere. The Republicans are a small minority in the legislature. You're not going to get your will on this. That money you just talked about has been earmarked for other stuff. So if you're not going to stop Interstate 5 from crumbling, you're going to have to figure out a way to pay more. And frankly, vehicle license fees haven't been raised in years.
Well, part of the problem we see in Sacramento, you've been around long enough to see it, we vote and put 2/3 up to increase the tax. The majority changes and puts it to something else. Or in the case of the truck weight fees that are being diverted, they divert it someplace else. They say, here, this is the only way we can solve it. And we're saying there's another way. So you want our votes, you're going to help play ball with us on the things that are important to us, and then we'll help you with the things that are important to you.
Governor did not mention the bullet train. Why is that?
Well, he did mention bullet. He said we need to bite the bullet and raise transportation taxes. And I said if he had said if you bite the bullet on the bullet train, you would have got some Republican applause. But I think he knows that's a thorny subject. The public opinion polls show that the voters have shifted. They would rather put that money into other infrastructure, other items.
Do you hear from Democrats on that issue?
Oh, yeah. You know, it's not just a partisan issue as it once started off to be. But even back in the beginning, Alan Lowenthal was chair of transportation. I was vice chair. We were asking for a viable business plan. We couldn't get one back in the beginning. And, you know, we got a little closer one, but it's so out of kilter from what the voters actually voted for.
What mark do you give him on this past year?
You know, I'll do a pass-fail. He gets a rousing pass. You know, I think the governor is engaged. He's very sharp. He understands issues. When we did the water bond, I think that was the apex of everything, putting everything together to really tackle a thorny issue. Last year probably wasn't as good, really, because he identified the problem in infrastructure, but then we didn't really get anything done on it. So this year he's taking a second bite of that apple.
We've seen an increase in crime in California, certainly in Southern California. He never mentioned the realignment, which is sending prison felons to county jails. There was also, of course, Prop 47, which was independent of the governor. What is the attitude? Does crime come up as an issue in the legislature?
It does come up, but it's not as sexy as job creation, because that's a huge issue also. You're seeing increased homelessness. There's more to talk about that. And frankly, still the transportation infrastructure. Those tend to get more, they're more sexy than, you know, rising crime. But public safety is government's #1 focus, and we got to figure out why it's rising again.
What resonated with you in this past speech?
His fiscal restraint. I thought he did a really good job. It was a budget speech. It really wasn't the state of the state. He was talking about all the things we've accomplished, why we got to hold the line, and then he restated all we've accomplished. It wasn't about starting new programs. It was holding the line, absorbing the cost of what we've already done, and I think that's a good message for this legislature.
What was disappointing?
Well, he didn't have a lot of specifics about how we're going to get things done. You know, he talked about all the money we're putting into education, but we're doing 51% more than we were at the bottom of the recession, but we still have no accountability built into it. So you just pay the people more that are failing our children. You're still going to get failed children, but the teachers will get paid more.
It's an election year. Do you anticipate much out of the California legislature, or are they just going to wait for the ballot measures to go before voters?
I don't think it is a year to get a lot accomplished. You can measure accomplishment by what you haven't done sometimes. This is that year.
Bob Huff, a Republican from Diamond Bar, former minority leader, thank you very much for joining us. I do appreciate it.